The story begins in the present day, where a poetry activity is being held for senior citizens. Among the participants is 70-year-old Asun, whose poem takes her down memory lane, unraveling the story of her childhood. Back in the past, Asun's mother was a resilient haenyeo, a female diver who worked tirelessly to support her family. Having lost her bedridden husband, she remarried, but life remained a struggle. Despite financial hardships, Asun was sent to live with her father's well-off relatives so she could receive a good education. However, her time in their home was far from pleasant. She was treated unfairly and made to feel like an outsider. Desperate for love and warmth, Asun frequently begged her mother to let her live with her instead. Even when she achieved second place in a poetry competition, her mother, overwhelmed with work, was unable to acknowledge her success. Asun returned to her uncle's house, where she was burdened with endless chores. Meanwhile, her mother finally found time to read her poem. In it, Asun promised to give her mother 1,001 a day in the future, so she wouldn't have to work so hard. Deeply moved by these heartfelt words, her mother was overcome with emotion and fury at how her daughter was being treated. Without hesitation, she stormed into the house, caused an uproar, and left behind an abundance of fish as a symbolic rejection of their mistreatment. Taking Asun by the hand, she brought her home for good. As they settled into their new life together, Asun experienced another setback when she was unfairly denied the class president position. Despite winning the election, the title was handed to the son of a powerful figure. Frustrated by the injustice, her mother took matters into her own hands, visiting the school and bribing the teacher to ensure Asun received better treatment. One day, upon returning home, her mother threw away all the cigarettes in the house. She did so with newfound determination, as Asun had once promised to buy her a pearl necklace in the future. To live long enough to see that promise fulfilled, she vowed to take better care of herself. But fate had other plans. By 1961, years of grueling labor in the sea had taken their toll. Asun's mother fell seriously ill. Despite the devastation of watching her mother's health deteriorate, she wasn't entirely alone. A quiet yet unwavering presence in her life was Gwan-sik, a boy who silently looked after her, always ensuring she had something to eat. One evening, her mother prepared abalone for her, perhaps as a final act of love. She urged Asun never to become a servant to her stepfather's family after her passing. Instead, she insisted that Asun return to her uncle's house and plead to stay there, believing it was the only way she could have a better future. Soon after, her mother passed away, leaving a void in Asun's heart. But Gwan-sik remained by her side. Following her mother's death, Asun's stepfather convinced her to stay and help him with household duties. One day, she noticed a small patch of land outside their home. Determined to create something of her own, she transformed it into a thriving cabbage farm, with Gwan-sik and local women lending their support. Through it all, Gwan-sik continued to look out for her, offering help in quiet but meaningful ways. Asun eventually realized she could not pursue her studies while shouldering endless responsibilities. She resolved to leave, but her stepfather persuaded her to stay by promising to send her to the mainland to study Korean literature. To fund her education, she began selling cabbages at the market. Yet in truth, it was Gwan-sik who handled most of the selling while Asun studied. However, their growing bond did not go unnoticed. Gwan-sik's grandmother arrived one day and forcefully sent Asun away, determined to prevent any possibility of marriage between them. The local women's teasing about their relationship only fueled her grandmother's determination. As Asun ran off, she called out a firm no, thank you, in response to the idea of marrying Gwan-sik, bringing the episode to an emotional close. The second episode picks up with Gwan-sik rushing after Asun, who had been chased away by his strict grandmother. The two wander together, and we learn more about Gwan-sik's background. His parents had run away together before they were married, which explains why his grandmother is adamant about keeping him away from Asun. As they stroll, Asun repeatedly insists that she would never consider marrying him. However, Gwan-sik, perhaps frustrated by her teasing, attempts to kiss her but misses. It's in this moment that we realize Asun may have feelings for him too. As he clumsily confesses in his own indirect way, the two share an awkward yet endearing kiss before continuing on in silence. In the present-day storyline, an older Asun is seen with her children, revealing that her daughter has been narrating the story all along. Returning to the past, Asun arrives home to find her stepfather hiding with another woman. Later that night, she overhears their conversation. This woman, NN, refuses to take responsibility for raising Asun. With nowhere else to turn, Asun goes to her uncle's house. But instead of offering support, her uncle tries to convince her to abandon her education and work in a factory, arguing that the family's financial situation cannot sustain her college ambitions. The next day, Asun officially leaves her stepfather's house, only to learn that he has no money to give her. 4 years, he had promised to support her in exchange for her raising her younger siblings, but now that she needs his help, he has nothing to offer. With no home, no money, and no clear path forward, she turns to Gwan-sik. Overwhelmed by the weight of her situation, she breaks down in tears, and in an effort to provide a solution, Gwan-sik offers to marry her. However, Asun has always dreamed of marrying someone from the mainland, so she could leave Jeju Island behind for good. Determined to take control of their own destinies, Asun and Gwan-sik make a daring plan. They steal jewelry from their respective homes, pack their belongings, and disguise themselves as adults, waiting for a ship to the mainland. Once on board, the captain grows suspicious, suspecting them to be runaways. But Asun, ever quick-witted, boldly claims they are a married couple, shutting down further questions. Upon arriving in Busan, they attempt to pawn their stolen jewelry, but the shopkeeper quickly catches on and refuses to accept it. As they search for a place to stay, they pretend to be newlyweds who have lost their wallets, claiming their IDs are inside. Surprisingly, the owners of a small inn take pity on them, offering shelter along with food and alcohol. The next morning, however, they wake up to a shocking realization: all their belongings have been stolen. When they confront the innkeepers, the couple feigns innocence, but it's clear they knew the truth all along. Asun and Gwan-sik are given an ultimatum: leave immediately or risk being reported to the police. Now stranded with nothing, Asun recalls the fairy tale of Hansel and Gretel, how the siblings used their wits to outsmart the wicked witch. Inspired, she devises a bold plan. That night, they spy on the innkeepers as they lure in another unsuspecting victim. Once the new guest is in her room, Asun and Gwan-sik sneak in and warn her not to turn off her light, preventing the innkeepers from robbing her. Frustrated, the owners decide to overcharge the woman instead and head to bed. Seizing the opportunity, Asun and Gwan-sik sneak into their room to reclaim their stolen money. Just as their plan is about to succeed, Asun notices something. The owner's daughter is wearing the hair clip that Gwan-sik had given her. Determined to get it back, she reaches for it, but in doing so, accidentally wakes up the entire household. As the owners come after them, the two make a run for it. However, Asun gets caught. The episode ends with Gwan-sik summoning every ounce of courage he has, striking their captors in a desperate attempt to save her. Asun and Gwan-sik's desperate attempt to reclaim their stolen belongings has landed them in the police station. There, they discover that Gwan-sik's mother has been tirelessly searching for them, visiting multiple police stations in Busan. Upon reuniting with her son, she immediately demands the return of her precious golden frog, an item of great value that Gwan-sik had taken from their home. Meanwhile, the woman who had robbed them has already pawned off their jewelry, including the golden frog. When it comes time for payment at the scammer's residence, Gwan-sik's mother arrives just in time, ready to reclaim what's rightfully hers. A heated confrontation breaks out, leading to the police stepping in and arresting the scammer, who is exposed as a repeat offender. With the matter resolved, Asun, Gwan-sik, and his mother return to Jeju Island. Back home, Gwan-sik receives relatively light consequences for running away. He has only been suspended from school. But for Asun, the punishment is far worse. She learns that her enrollment has been permanently revoked, shattering any chance of continuing her education. When Gwan-sik confronts Asun's grandmother about this injustice, he is met with a cruel but painfully true reality. When a boy runs away, it's considered brave. When a girl does the same, it brings shame upon her. Now left with nothing but a middle school diploma, Asun's future looks bleak. In response, Gwan-sik declares that he will marry her. The next day, Gwan-sik's mother visits Asun, gently trying to dissuade her from marrying her son. Later, Gwan-sik approaches Asun's uncle, formally requesting her hand in marriage. But before anyone else can respond, Asun outright refuses. As a result, she soon finds herself being forced into a blind date with a much older man, a 30-year-old widower searching for a second wife to raise his children. In exchange, he offers to cover her college tuition. The situation is heartbreaking because Asun knows this is exactly what her mother had feared for her, that she would end up becoming someone's housekeeper rather than living her own life. That night, when Gwan-sik hears about Asun being pushed into an arranged marriage, he is furious. He storms into her uncle's house, demanding answers, but when that fails, he rushes to find Asun herself. Spotting her walking with the older man, he pulls her aside and pleads with her not to go through with it. In a desperate attempt to change her mind, he places a ring on her finger. However, Asun immediately removes it, throwing it into a nearby field. With tears in her eyes, she tells him that if he truly wants her to be happy, he must let her go because his presence is preventing her from finding freedom. Crushed, Gwan-sik walks away. Later, Asun returns to the field in search of the ring but is unable to find it. The next day, as Asun prepares for her wedding in a state of quiet misery, Gwan-sik departs for the mainland to compete in an athletics tournament. It is then revealed that Gwan-sik's mother had spoken to Asun, telling her about his incredible athletic talent and how marrying him would mean forcing him to give up his future. Realizing that her presence in his life could hold him back, Asun had lied, pretending that she never wanted to be with him in the first place, in order to push him toward his dreams. However, what she didn't know was that Gwan-sik had only pursued athletics for one reason: to win medals and provide a better life for her. Now, without Asun, he has lost all interest in the sport. It is in this moment that Asun finally understands just how much Gwan-sik has been her pillar of strength all these years. Overcome with emotion, she rushes to the harbor, hoping to catch him before he leaves. But by the time she arrives, the ship is already sailing away. Desperate, she cries out his name, hoping he will hear her. Just when it seems like he is truly gone, Gwan-sik turns, sees her running along the shore, and in a dramatic display of determination, leaps into the sea, swimming back to her. As the villagers gather to witness the emotional reunion, Asun and Gwan-sik embrace, defying the disapproval of his family. In the present-day storyline, Gwan-sik's sister reveals to Asun's daughter that she was conceived on the very night her parents reunited. The episode then flashes back to a young Asun and Gwan-sik, now parents, joyfully playing with their baby daughter, Gamong. Through her narration, Gamong reflects on how her parents gave up their dreams to start a family at a young age. Finally, in the epilogue, a touching revelation unfolds. Gwan-sik had secretly gone back to the pawn shop to retrieve a wedding ring for Asun. The episode ends with the couple selecting their wedding clothes, finally stepping into a new chapter of their lives together. The story jumps forward several years, bringing us to a point where Asun is struggling through the challenges of adulthood. During this time, she crosses paths with Minho, the woman who had once been her stepfather's mistress but is now his wife. Minho has just given birth to her first child, and despite their complicated past, Asun steps in to help her. We learn that Minho married Asun's stepfather a decade after her mother's passing, and over the years, she softened and became a mother to Asun's younger half-siblings. In this unexpected moment of connection, the tension between them fades, replaced by an unspoken understanding. Later, Asun returns home with gifts for her family, including a tricycle that Minho gave her for Gamong. However, her excitement is quickly dampened when her in-laws disapprove. Gwan-sik's grandmother insists that Gamong, as a girl, shouldn't learn how to ride it. That evening, Asun confides in Gwan-sik, expressing her deep frustration. She pleads with him to let Gamong experience the freedom she never had, fearing that if she is denied even something as simple as a tricycle, she will be confined to the kitchen, just as Asun had been. The next day, Gwan-sik takes a stand for their daughter. He buys a brand new, expensive tricycle, one valuable enough that his family wouldn't dare sell it off for something as trivial as candy. This ensures that Gamong has the chance to ride freely, bringing Asun a rare moment of joy. The timeline then jumps forward to 1996, the present, where Gamong, now an adult, narrates her mother's story. As she navigates her own life, she secures a job and is introduced to her fiancé's influential mother. However, The woman looks down on Gamong, belittling her for coming from a poor background. Gamong remains composed despite the condescending remarks, but when her fiancé's mother insists that she quit her job after marriage, she refuses. Aware of the sacrifices her mother made to ensure her independence, Gamong stands firm and later tells her fiancé that she is in no rush to marry. She values her own ambitions too much to give them up. Meanwhile, back in the past, Asun and Gwan-sik are expecting their second child. However, when Asun discovers that Gwan-sik's family is pressuring Gamong to become a haenyeo, a female diver, she is furious. Memories of her own mother's suffering come rushing back. Asun, who had lost her mother to an illness caused by years of grueling underwater labor, refuses to let her daughter meet the same fate. Her defiance leads to a heated confrontation with her mother-in-law, who, in a fit of anger, slaps Asun. Just then, Gwan-sik arrives home from his fishing shift, witnessing the mistreatment firsthand. Unable to endure the toxic environment any longer, he makes a bold decision. He takes Asun and Gamong and leaves his family home. The three of them move into a modest rented room with a small kitchen. Despite their struggles, they find solace in each other. Then, unexpectedly, they discover that someone has secretly paid their rent for 3 months. The identity of their mysterious benefactor remains unknown. Days pass, and one evening, Gwan-sik returns home with a broken finger. Asun is devastated to see him injured, and later that night, she notices additional bruises on his body. Pretending to be cheerful, she sends him off to work the next morning before setting out to uncover the truth. She arrives at the home of Sang-il, the man she had once been pressured to marry. From a village woman, Asun learns that Sang-il has been exploiting and abusing Gwan-sik, forcing him to work even after his hand was injured. Worse yet, when Gwan-sik was hurt at sea, Sang-il refused to turn the boat around, deliberately worsening his condition. Meanwhile, at the docks, we see Sang-il once again mistreating Gwan-sik, denying him the right to go home after their fishing shift. Just as he raises a foot to kick Gwan-sik, Asun arrives, fury burning in her eyes. She marches up to them and announces that Gwan-sik will never work for Sang-il again. As they turn to leave, Sang-il hurls insults at Gwan-sik, mocking him. But this time, Asun refuses to stay silent. In a powerful moment of defiance, she kicks Sang-il hard in the shin, leaving him stunned as she and Gwan-sik walk away together. The episode then shifts back to 1996, where an older Asun is seen assisting Gwan-sik, who now has a bad leg after enduring years of hard labor. As they sit together, there is a quiet understanding between them, a lifetime of struggles, resilience, and unwavering love. The first volume of When Life Gives You Tangerines is a beautifully woven tale of love, sacrifice, and resilience, capturing the life of Asun from her troubled childhood to her struggles as an adult. The series seamlessly blends past and present, giving us a multi-generational story that is both emotionally rich and thematically profound. At its core, this drama isn't just about romance. It's a testament to the hardships faced by women in a rigid, patriarchal society. Asun's journey is filled with heartbreak, but her determination to break free from the cycle of suffering makes her an incredibly compelling protagonist. From being abandoned by her paternal family to fighting for her right to education and independence, her story is deeply moving. One of the most striking aspects of this volume is its critique of gender roles. Throughout the episodes, we see how societal expectations place unfair burdens on women, whether it's Asun being denied opportunities or her daughter, Gamong, being pressured to follow in her grandmother's footsteps as a haenyeo. The generational struggles make for a powerful narrative, showing how deeply ingrained these issues are and how they continue to shape lives, even decades later. Gwan-sik serves as the unwavering pillar in Asun's life, but what makes their relationship stand out is that it doesn't conform to the traditional knight in shining armor trope. While he fiercely supports Asun, he also faces his own struggles, making their bond feel authentic rather than idealized. His unwavering devotion to her is both heartwarming and tragic, especially as he sacrifices his dreams in the name of love. The use of time jumps between the 1960s and the 1990s adds another layer of emotional weight to the story. Seeing Gamong as an adult, facing similar prejudices as her mother once did, reinforces the idea that while times may change, some battles remain the same. However, Her refusal to conform to societal expectations gives us hope that change is possible, even if it comes slowly. With Volume 1 setting such a strong foundation, there are plenty of intriguing possibilities for the second part of the story. One of the biggest unresolved questions is who secretly paid for Asun and Gwan-sik's rent after they left his family home. Could it be someone from Gwan-sik's family feeling remorse? Or perhaps Min-ho, Asun's former stepmother, in an attempt to quietly help her? This mystery is likely to unfold in the next volume. Another major question is how Gwan-sik's injury will impact their lives moving forward. In the present timeline, we see that years of hard labor have left him with a bad leg, but we don't yet know the full story of how this affected his ability to provide for his family. Will this be the beginning of a new struggle for them in Volume 2? Gamong's storyline is also poised for major developments. Her rejection of her fiancé's family's expectations suggests that she is determined to live life on her own terms. But will this decision lead her down a different path than her mother's, or will she find herself in a similar struggle? Perhaps Volume 2 will explore whether she truly manages to break the cycle of hardship that has plagued her family for generations. And finally, there is the question of Asun and Gwan-sik's relationship in their later years. The show has focused heavily on their youth and early struggles, but how do they navigate their relationship as they grow older? Will they find peace and happiness in their later years, or will life continue to test them? Volume 1 of When Life Gives You Tangerines is an emotionally gripping, beautifully written story that masterfully balances heartbreak with moments of warmth and joy. The storytelling is rich with depth, making it impossible not to become deeply invested in Asun's journey. With its powerful social commentary, complex characters, and deeply emotional narrative, When Life Gives You Tangerines has set the bar high for Volume 2. If the second volume continues this level of storytelling, we can expect an even deeper exploration of love, loss, and the fight for self-determination. This is more than just a drama. It's a reflection of real-life struggles, making it one of the most compelling K-dramas of the year. Volume 2 has a lot of ground to cover, but if it follows the emotional intensity and brilliance of the first, it's bound to be just as unforgettable.